Welcome to You Are the Media Now, a podcast about digital communication strategies that go beyond legacy media and empower businesses, brands, and individuals looking to land big impact on platforms that build empires. And now, here are your hosts, Scott Mitchell and yours truly, Ryan Welton.
Hello and welcome again to episode 2 of You Are the Media Now with my friend Ryan Welton. And the week is replete with examples of what you need to be doing in the new atmosphere, Ryan.
It sure is. And a lot of things that are big in the headlines. Did you have a good Thanksgiving?
I had a great Thanksgiving for the Thanksgiving night with what the Packers did. Not so much this week. Pain
Right.
is spelled Lions for me.
Right. I mean, could this be the year that the Bills and the Lions, sort of like the faux Canadian Super Bowl?
Could be. I mean, I'm up for it. I just, as a Packer to the core shareholder, my kids are all shareholders.
Yeah.
I so admire Dan Campbell, who's going to become really famous. Okay, this guy's going to be famous.
Totally agree. Yeah. We
There's
talk
no
about direct to
reserve with
audience
this guy.
techniques. He's a direct to audience guy.
Yeah.
I still do think that the Packers are a really solid team, good team. I mean, it was just a 3-point game, but Jordan Love is a stud. Josh Jacobs, by the way, from Tulsa McLean, went to Alabama. He was with the Raiders, now with the Packers. That's a good team.
Yeah, they're good, and need somebody else to knock off the Lions. So,
100%.
well, that's an interesting deal to see. I think about Lions and Bills. I'd like a small market Super Bowl. I'm thinking more along of Bills Packers, but anyway,
Right. That would be a good one too. Yeah, totally.
hey, let's start with the list that you have, which is there's so much that happened this week, so much drama, but also some tragedy, and a lot of it has to do with legislation and court cases that are happening. And if you're certain social media companies, you better be taking steps to protect yourself right now.
Right. 100%. Let's talk about TikTok. Of course, yesterday, a federal appeals court, and I'm taking this from CNBC, cited national security concerns as it upheld a law requiring China-based ByteDance to sell the popular social media app TikTok next month or face an effective ban in the United States. One thing about this ban, it would happen on January 19th, the day before President-elect Trump becomes President Trump. So will it happen? ByteDance's executive leadership team has vowed to take this to the Supreme Court. Everything I've read indicates that under the guise of national security, the Supreme Court is not likely to give this much weight, even in lieu of First Amendment considerations. So, on the other hand, President-elect Trump and designees such as RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard have actually built pretty huge audiences on ByteDance. On TikTok, owned by ByteDance. By the way, I should note that this doesn't appear to impact the app called CapCut, which is also owned by ByteDance. This is all about TikTok. And I don't have my Vox article up, but it appears that one of the biggest Trump contributors is a big shareholder of TikTok through a capital holdings firm called Susquehanna. So I kind of think that in the end, TikTok will still be here. I hope it's not something that is divested to an Elon Musk or a Mark Zuckerberg. I hope that they decide to go ahead and divest to an American company and make everybody happy. I will tell you, I don't want to be cynical, Scott. However, I actually firmly believe this is a situation where we are less concerned about the Chinese government actually using our data for national security concerns, and more about if we can't steal your data, then nobody can. It's kind of cynical, but Facebook's doing it, Meta, all these platforms are doing it for whatever reason. I happen to be very positively biased toward TikTok. It has been the easiest place for me and small businesses across the country to build an audience. frankly, from a moderation perspective, I feel I have a 16-year-old stepdaughter. I feel it's a safer platform than Facebook and Instagram from a moderation perspective. Have I seen weirdness on TikTok? Yes. I will give you an instance, Scott, of someplace where I was like, the PRC, the CCP may be involved here. And I had posted, just as an experiment, a vertical news video. It was a talker where I was talking about the Chinese spy balloon that was moving across the United States. And would
I
you
remember that.
believe that only got like 5 views? I was like, oh, shadow ban. That's interesting. Well, A/B testing. I try it again, and it got another 5 views. I was like, what am I doing wrong here? And I was like, come on, Ryan, you could talk about anything else now and your video will be just fine. And it was. And then so I tried the Chinese spy balloon video again, and it once again got 3 views. It was totally banned. So I do see that happening. But all in all, you talk about an unpopular move. I could be over amplifying what the sentiment is positively with regard to TikTok, but banning that app in America right now is going to be a incredibly unpopular move, and it would be a very popular first move for President Trump to ensure that he protects that app for Americans. There are a lot of creators and business folks who make a ton of money off of that, where they're not able to nearly as much on a Facebook, Instagram, or even a YouTube.
Let me ask this question because I've a couple of thoughts going through my mind. One is, and you've said this many times, turn the camera on and create content, right? But you just gave an example of where that you're doing your own experimentation, but you help clients do this. When you're seeing A/B testing and I don't know enough about this to be able to do my test and even know what I'm looking for. So your experience in this, in testing to see if there's some shadow banning going on there.
Mhm.
I mean, how should people approach this? I mean, it's going to take a lot of time to get schooled up to figure out, I've got to do this 3, 4, 5 times, especially if you're reluctant to do the first one, just getting it posted. But getting it
Right.
posted is not the end all, right?
No, heavens no. And just, for those of you who aren't familiar with what A/B testing is, um, you record a video and you put it out there, but A/B testing is where you do 2 videos, maybe it's ABC, you do 3 videos, but you just change one element from each video. It might be that you do the same exact video with different blurbs, different headlines. Maybe you do one video with overlays, an image on top of your video, and then one image without. You have to constantly be testing. It might be that you put the same video out on multiple platforms and see on which it most resonates. So A/B testing has to be firmly part of what you do. But also, if your business is firmly entrenched in TikTok, this is the time for you to be moving to an omni-channel strategy. If you're not using a Buffer, a Hootsuite to get all of your videos to all the different platforms, the vertical video platforms, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, even LinkedIn, now is the time to do that. In fact, if your entire business is predicated upon TikTok, you can download those videos using something like TikTok itself or Talk Repost, which will take off the watermark. That's an important app to have. It costs about $10 a year. I say that. No, I think it's actually $40 a year, but it's called Talk Repost. You download it without the watermark, and you can get that entire inventory of video to other platforms. This is the TikTok ban possibility is huge, huge news in the digital comms space. And even though January 19th is more than a month away, if your business is dependent upon this, you have to start acting this weekend.
All right. Now, if I may follow up. So I rewatched episode 1, and I'm convinced, like everybody else, that when the shift is on and the Trump election, you can't believe how many people are looking back going, well, I knew that was going to happen. No, they didn't. I mean, not everybody knew that. But so I'm convinced. But when you talk about these platforms, and it's daunting. All right. So I'm a businessman, a businesswoman, or a board of directors, or any of these folks are sitting around talking. they're iconoclasts. They wanted to stop doing what they were doing. They think that we've got to shift away from what we've been doing. And the first question is going to be on a board of directors is going to be, well, which of these do we do? I mean, there are 7, 8. If you go look at the trends in this country, you've got Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and LinkedIn. I mean, number one, it's daunting. And then the second thing you see is, well, what's the content going to be? What's the length of the content? What frame do I shoot it in? Is it vertical or is it horizontal? How long? When do I post? Smart business people are going to look at this and go, man, I don't have the time to sit down for 60 days to train myself into this. So you've got to, it's kind of like eating an elephant, right? You got one bite at a time. How do you take 2 or 3 bites should a person be taking right now? You're going to get into this like you were doing yourself on TikTok in your A/B testing.
Systemization. So it's stepping back from the process of content creation and saying, you know what, I'm going to take the weekend or the week and I'm going to develop a system that will make this a little more routine. And I've done A/B testing both in the news space and in personal space, and A/B testing could also just be called testing, experimentation. But the systemization of having a platform like a Buffer or a Hootsuite, or if you're in the news space, Social News Desk, to get your videos, to get your content out to multiple platforms at once, to get on a content calendar, to get on a schedule, and to actually turn this into a system to where you're getting your content everywhere. So to the question from the executive, which platform should I be on? My answer is we can have this conversation, but I would be lying to you if I didn't say you kind of ought to be everywhere, at least at the start, and then you can pull back.
We talked a little bit about on this last week, so I'm going to bring it up again. Vertical video. That seems to be all through your discussion in terms of how effective that is. Why is that? And how can I use that to my advantage, regardless of the platform?
So vertical video is just how we hold the phone. TVs are 16:9 and phones are 9:16. That's just the ratio.
This is
It would be
vertical, right?
weird. Right. And just think
And
about
this
how
would
weird it
be
would be.
horizontal.
That's
Okay.
horizontal. Think about how weird it would be to have a vertical TV at home. I mean, there are a lot of monitors that you can actually make vertical, but people would be like, you don't watch it like that. That's a TV. Likewise, on the phone, unless you're watching like a football game and you want it to fill up the screen, you're probably going to be watching the video vertical. Now, there are ways to capture that video at the same time, both horizontal and vertical. It could be 2 cameras. It might be that you record it horizontal, and then in Premiere or in CapCut, you add wings to it. But vertical video is important. You want your face to fill the whole screen. The conversations aren't you to the world, it's you to one person. Scott, if I'm recording a vertical video, I'm pretending that you're on the other end of it. I'm just talking to you. But vertical video has to be part of this. And there are PR and comms teams and politicians who have communication staffs who are still doing this horizontally. And I will tell you, even though a lot of them are on the vertical video train, fact is they're not doing that enough. Really, frankly, at this point, vertical needs to be primary and horizontal secondary.
And what's the magic? I mean, what is the magic that I think you had given me some data months ago where you're saying like about 90% of social media that's consumed has got vertical video in it.
Right.
So what came first, the vertical video or the platforms? What is the magic elixir?
Well, so Gary Vaynerchuk calls it the TikTokification of social media. So TikTok's influence largely, and by the way, Snapchat's the same way. Some of the things that these platforms have introduced are just copied then by Instagram and Facebook. The magic to me is consistency. It is, as I described to a colleague yesterday, in terms of what I believe journalism still has a place in corporate media. I mean, there will still be local and TV national TV stations and networks, but also individual journalists can go out and do their own thing and build an audience. I described it as a constant drip. And that's why it's so important right now, with TikTok effectively going to be banned on January 19th, to be systematizing your content process and not deciding to shoot a video and then post it right now. That type of labor at scale is going to drive you nuts. You have to develop a system. You have to learn how to batch your content. And without being able to systematize it, it's just you're never going to be willing to do it. For example, I've likened this to having a trainer. You work with the trainer on the weekend at the gym, but then if you go home and eat bonbons and watch Netflix all week, that one day a week spending $200 with your trainer or whatever it might be isn't going to do you any good. The magic, you asked about the magic is in the consistency. It is in day-to-day touching base with that tribe, with that person who's interested in you. I found this in my own TikTok exploits. I have a handful of people who, for whatever reason, like me for me. And I will tell you, whether it's on TV or on social, that is, in fact, that's the magic.
Well, the title is You Are the Media Now. I saw something this week. You tell me if I'm off my rocker on this. We know the contraction that's happened in general journalism around the country, specifically print, and where that, for example, in Oklahoma, I think maybe the best job being done for print, although it's never print, is the ladies and gentlemen over at NonDoc, who do these great stories. And not that there aren't other organizations doing it, but NonDoc is creating so much really fast content. I mean, it's not, they don't have a reporter working in one story every couple of weeks. I mean, they're cranking out stuff every day. And I still get a kick out of these companies that spend a lot of time on press releases and some of the old fashioned stuff that's just not being read. Right. But this week there was a really interesting press release that went out from the University of Oklahoma Athletic Department, Joe Castiglione, announcing that he was bringing on Randall Stevenson, the former chairman of AT&T, in to take a look at the athletics department.
Mhm.
I started checking at Google, all right, first off, to try to get more into this story, because my thinking on this was, this is really not a sports story. This is a business story. And it also, when you're talking about what's happening in college athletics, and we're talking about the situation we're paying players back to the lawsuit that happened. And remember, for Oklahomans, for people anywhere, you're watching 500 movies or 500 football games this weekend. It goes back to a 40-year-old case brought by Andy Coates and Kent Myers and Barry Switzer against the behemoth of all behemoths 40 years ago, the NCAA, which was all powerful.
Yeah,
Right.
it's the University of Oklahoma and the University of Georgia.
Yeah. Yeah. And Vince Dooley's no longer with us. Barry Switzer is. But this is where this all started. And now there's landmark cases. It's so, we can't unpack it here right now. But to bring Randall Stevenson into this situation begged more analysis on this story. And it just hasn't happened. I mean, I've read some good stories, but largely out of what was in that press release. To me, Ryan, this is a situation where that a niche reporter or somebody who's a hobbyist. There was the story about the assassination that happened in New York City the other day. A guy who was scraping data on bicycles, on bicycles, was
Right.
got a jillion followers this week because he thought he was following the bicycle that was used as the getaway. It wasn't one, apparently. But nonetheless, if the media doesn't do a really great job of covering something like this or getting into what's behind the scenes on this, then this is where that You Are the Media Now, somebody could capitalize on this and become an overnight sensation just because they understand the economics, the legislative aspect of it, as well as the sports angle, which to me is the least of all of those three topics.
100%. You teed that up very, very nicely, because I didn't even think about it as the story was happening. So it largely stemmed from an email that Joe Castiglione sent out. And a lot of us were talking in the newsroom about it being an NIL story. I was like, this is not an NIL story. If you think this is an NIL story, you should be reaching out to Toby Baldwin at OU, who oversees all of that. I said the thing that caught my attention, and by the way, it pays to have gray hair every once in a while because you have some context in time. We remember the OU Georgia case in 1982, but the name Randall Stevenson perked my ears. And we had heard that the university was going to start attacking its athletics program more like a business and the football team more like an NFL organization. Bringing in a guy with the gravitas and the respect and the love for the University of Oklahoma, like Randall Stevenson, was the headline, even though in Joe's email, it was in the middle of it. And so I think the opportunity for somebody who understands the economics, the process, the inner workings, the politics at the university, the passions that people have about football and athletics in general, to shine light and explain and teach. You know, they say on the interwebs that the 3 ways to build an audience are to entertain, educate, or inspire. And educate has been by a mile, whether you're a cook or a math teacher, probably the best way to actually build an audience on the interwebs. And that's one of the powers of journalism, is to not only be a stenographer, which is sort of like the lowest form of journalism, but to provide clarity and analysis and understanding. So yeah, if you really understand that situation at OU or in the economics of college athletics, you have an opportunity to build a huge niche audience, just like whoever that person was who is trying to cover the assassination of CEO Brian Thompson of United Healthcare. Everybody is on the lookout for whoever killed him, and he noticed some information about city bikes. So people talk about the death of expertise. The opportunity on digital is actually the rise of niche expertise.
Well, they didn't bring in, University of Oklahoma did not bring in Bill Belichick or Tom Brady or somebody who might have worked for Jerry Jones at some point. They brought in Randall Stevenson. And Randall Stevenson's expertise has been disruptive climates and succeeding in those climates. Also, he's a member of the Council of Foreign Relations. He understands things that work internationally. But this is a business story. It's tangentially a sports story. But also, when you're talking about this, you're going to be seeing if schools are going to start setting salary caps and whatnot. Now we're talking antitrust. So that ain't a sports story. So there's
Right.
there's just so much more. And begging, one of the people who it's been rumored might have even been involved in the analysis by universities and switching conferences. Andrew Brandt, former general manager for the Packers, or a capologist for the Packers, has a huge social media following because he understands capology, understands the business practices of the National Football League. And they've all had to have enabling legislation. Otherwise, you're in antitrust hot water. So the days of how that college sports has worked in the past is done. I mean, maybe people don't understand it.
There's a lot of parallels between college athletics and the media right now. We talked about before we started recording the idea that the general manager would actually have a lot more control of what players were coming in and they would be managing the salary cap space, and the coach would essentially be relegated to just coaching, much like in an NFL situation. Less about recruiting and more about coaching, and that there would be an ecosystem, a business that was taking care of the recruiting, and that could be good or bad. You could end up with situations where, because of the transfer portal, you have a big time athlete collect his money from a university and bolt, and then you're entangled in a lawsuit with an 18 or 19-year-old. So this is real life for these institutions, and you're absolutely right. It's more of a business story than a sports story, at least in terms of journalistic opportunity.
We'll watch that and watch that space and see what happens. And some of it may yet to be developed, but there may be some people thinking of that. All right. Let's get lastly into if there were any lessons that you saw this week in terms of the United Healthcare story, and you are the media now-esque sorts of examples that you saw this week.
So in my 20 years of working in local TV news, I will tell you, it's a scary world out there. This is not going to be a shock to anybody. And that I would say it doesn't happen constantly, but 2 or 3 times a year, you learn about somebody on the interwebs stalking, harassing somebody at your station. This happens. And I'm lucky to work for an organization that has a great relationship with the authorities, and detectives and folks are always helping us in that regard. However, I've also worked for very, very large organizations whose founders, millionaires and billionaires, they don't want to lose the privacy that they have, and they don't want to walk around with a bodyguard. I remember working at a company in Dallas 30 years ago. Michael Dell came into the building and he was flanked by bodyguards. Well, Brian Thompson didn't have a bodyguard with him when he walked into an investor day conference at the Hilton Hotel in Midtown Manhattan, where he was killed, and it's caught on tape. And it prompted corporate security departments across the country to go into crisis mode, rightly so, to make sure that they had the operations and steps in place to protect their leadership team, protect their employees. There is also a comms piece to this that I think is really important, because when we ask people in businesses, you are the media, it does give you public exposure. The danger is that it does give you public exposure. It's important to be engaging with platforms like Delete Me to make sure that private information is not too easily available. It is very important to be showing social proof of things you do in the community, but you always want to be doing it after the event, not before or during the event. Sure. For example, when we send the whole weather team out to Penn Square Mall, we got to promote it. We got to let them know when we're out there. But I will tell you, but we also have security out there. All right. So nothing's going to happen. But if you're an executive talking about your business and you're saying, hey, I'm going to be at this conference today, just make sure it's a situation where there is going to be good security. Otherwise, gather your content and just post it afterward as sort of like social proof. Just be very cognizant of what you're doing online, such that if you think that there is a potential issue, that you're not really broadcasting to everybody where you are. I often advise people who have these concerns, even at a personal level. If you have a public profile, if you're going out to dinner, don't really check in while you're there. Check in after you leave.
Good idea. There may have been a couple of assassination attempts on a guy running for president this past year. I mean, it
Right.
is scary out there.
That's how scary it is. And he has the Secret Service. We want people to be as forthright and aggressive about communicating their messages direct to audience. It will help for you to have somebody who has some corporate comms experience, whether it's an agency, whether it's something like Doable Digital, who can help you navigate potential issues, and just to make sure that your profile on the internet is as clean as possible.
In other words, not able to track you going into a hotel
Right.
6
Right.
a.m. in the morning.
Right.
I'm not going to be posting. I'll be speaking at 5:45, and I totally get it.
It depends on the situation. It depends on your own situation. I think people were, it's very much a tragedy. People are awakened by this, and it's really has to be part of any sort of strategy that you have to make sure that your leadership team and your employees are safe.
All right. Good lesson. And I think that's, in this 30 minutes that we've had today was basically the following. Once a person has eyes and ears for what we've been talking about, okay, the opportunities and the things that, and it's not just business opportunities, it's opportunities to add to the conversation. And hopefully it seems as if the civil conversation has returned just a little bit in the last month. But at the same time, there is, with the contraction of what we called mainstream media economically, there are more and more opportunities for people who are, and they're not talking about flakes. We're talking about real experts who have not had access to the masses, now having access to the masses with a few of the schools, a few of the tools and skills that we're talking about. And we're so grateful for your time, Ryan. And we'll be talking to you next week. And I'm sure we'll have more lessons and more things that we can learn about how you are the media now.
100%. We'll be scouring the headlines for every example we can find. There are people doing this, and if you're not doing it, you should be.
Yeah, if you're not doing it, you're gonna, as they say.
You're 100%.
See you next time.
You've been listening to You Are the Media Now, a podcast about digital communications. Hosted by Scott Mitchell and Ryan Welton. You can find Scott at Mitchell Talks and Ryan at doabledigitalmedia.com. This episode was produced by Ryan Welton, and the theme music, Anaheim Blonde, was written and produced by Ryan Welton.